Good morning. Checking something. 1 second. Sorry about that. Okay, good morning. Ayin Beis, volume 3. We're on page 1278. Okay. So in a very beautiful, eloquent way, the Rebbe Rashab is explaining the process, the actual process. I keep going back to those words because it's like a great headline. Oifen ha'amshocha sha'yidei ha'mitzvos. They said on page Lahagdim Tchila, Oifen ha'amshocha sha'yidei ha'mitzvos, it began on page 1272, the manner through which, and the process through how mitzvahs generate divine energy into existence. And we're talking really like two stages. What it does in this world, Bahai Alma, so we don't have the etzem and the amitis gilui haschar of the mitzvah, the yud-kei in its completely undiluted, that's not the right word, undiluted, unmasked yud-kei in full glory of the etzem sheidish shemokir of the mitzvahs in the highest levels that we learned with the mitzvahs arura, the kelim, in the pnimis etzem muhusa oir, helam ha'oir, helam ha'atzmi. But we do have it in Elam Hazeh through the mem tzadik, through the yud-kei as it manifests through the garment of mem tzadik of mitzvah, and the vav-kei of mitzvah, which means on a more revealed level in this world. And he's discussing now that dimension. So we say schar mitzvah b'hai al maleka. We're talking about, in the words of the Rebbe Rashab, that we're talking about Bahai Alma includes Gan Eden, and says Schar Maz Elam Ha Beleka Bahamad Chol Hamshachas the Mitzvos Achshav is only the way Yud-Kei manifests in the Ad Bash of Mem Tzadik. She'ein ze Etzem Mitzvah. V'amitis Aschar v'Hamshachas the Etzem Mitzvah Yil La'asid. The fourth line of the second paragraph on page 1277. But then he went on to speak about how the brachas and the shefa, the flow that mitzvahs generate in this world, that we do have, but we haven't yet talked about how revealed it is. It does accomplish. And not only that, he spoke about two dimensions here. In a way, it's like almost like the yud-kei and the vav-kei, the yud-kei of the mem tzadik and the vav-kei of the mem tzadik. He didn't say it explicitly, but he said two things. That first of all, without mitzvahs, you only have chitzenius air, which is like
if you're so
sleep.
Go make some.
Rabbi Eliezer, you should mute yourself.
Okay. So the first thing is you have is the element that the world on its own will get minimum amount of energy from yichud chitzeni of Abba ve'ima, which he gave the example for, like a person who's asleep. So though there is a little amount of energy, but it's not the way it is when a person's awake with the full vitality is there. And mitzvahs introduce that full vitality. But then he said even further, even chitzenius ha'er, even sleep, so to speak, is only due in order to bring the primus ha'er. Because the whole world was created, the condition God made is hitna, but he made a tanai, hitna kosh baruch hu ma'aseh bereishis, that if the Jews will receive Torah mitzvahs, then the world will exist, and if not, it won't. So even the chitzenius, even the sleep level, also is dependent on Torah mitzvahs. The difference is, like he said, the question is how much mitzvahs are done. Ach shadar, if a fitting generation.
Pablo, you can't do that. I told you. You have to.
When it's a generation that's achshadara, that's fitting, that's meritorious. I forgot how it's pronounced even. Whatever. A generation that's achshadara and there's more mitzvahs. So the flow from Yichud Panimi of Abba Ve'ima is deeper, and therefore the blessings are deeper. When it's a lesser amount, he said, Rava Ma'at, so it's still there, and at least the minimum energy will be there. And this is why Rosh Hashanah every year, this energy, how much will flow into existence, is measured and judged each generation, and not just, he made it clear for the Jewish people, but for the whole world. Even the Ayin Sarim, the nations of the world, and Daimim Tsameach Chai, the whole existence is dependent on that. Now, at the time of the Beis Hamikdash, when it stood, so then the blessing went through Eretz Yisrael, through Israel, the Holy Land, and Shara Shamayim, the gate to heaven of the Beis Hamikdash. But even as Man HaGolus, when the Jews are dispersed among the nations, it's also dependent on the mitzvahs. That's what we learned, and now we'll continue. Now he's going to explain what and how revealed is this schar, is this energy generated by mitzvahs. So it's clearly not the level of l'asad lavi, because l'asad lavi, the flow will be complete and it will be without any masks and any shields and no mem tzadik. It will all be yutke, and even the vavke will be on the level of yutke, which we'll get back to. But now he's still talking about im b'chokesei telechu, and a very powerful line I should also repeat is im b'chokesei telechu nisati geshmechem beitam. It's not just a reward, that since you did God's laws, God rewards you and he sends the rains, he sends the blessings to you. No, the very nature of existence, he said, teva. He said these words, that teva, the nature of existence, which is rooted in Yichud Chitzeni, very nature is bound to and subjugated to and dependent on the Torah mitzvahs, like a body is dependent on a soul. And as I said, even when the body is asleep, the only difference is more or less energy. Okay, so now we continue the new paragraph on page 1278, bottom of the page, closer to the bottom, and the pages can be found at ayinbeis.com. So he says, "V'omnom." Now, however, omnom, achshav, now, meaning bizman hazeh, in these times, and he's referring to the whole, everything before Geula. Kol zeis habrocha v'ashefa, all this blessing and flow, and that's why I went back and said before when he said habrocha shel hamitzvos, hamitzvah begashmis, the brocha is referring to the brachas that the mitzvahs generate. So all kol zeis habrocha v'ashefa, everything we just talked about, the blessing and the flow that happens through Torah mitzvahs of the Jews of the Jews down below, melubish is enclosed and manifest, enclothed, behalbosha, the tzimtzum ha'er eliki, enclosed in a form of like enclosed in a garment. So melubish is a verb, halbosha is a form of saying it's enclosed in a form of enclothement in the garment, and the tzimtzum, concealment of the er eliki. So in other words, the bracha is not necessarily fully revealed. It manifests itself in an enclosed way. In the words again, that the er eliki is both enclosed and diminished or concealed, depending how you translate tzimtzum. But it's definitely in a form of limit. It's not completely unfiltered or unguided. It's what's the word I want to use? I keep using unmasked is the right word. And due to that fact, that the bracha and the shefa is melubish, yesh achshav chilukim madreges. That's why today, again, today meaning referring to everything in all of history until the Geula, that's why we have chilukim madreges ba'amshocha k'moy shehi ba'elam haruchnim u ba'elam hagashmi. That's why we have the distinct levels, a distinction of levels, of different levels of this hamshocha. It's not equal. There's some times and some years and some periods in history where you see more of the blessing and the flow, and there are times you see less of it. Both in the Elamis Haruchim, in the spiritual worlds, because remember he said not just the Elamis Hagashmin, also the spiritual world, Tzva, Tzva Morim, he said. Also, the heavenly celestial bodies are also affected by the Torah mitzvahs. So both in Eilmas HaRuchnim and Eilmas HaGashmim. So in other words, there's distinct levels of how it's revealed. So even though it's true, it's coming from mitzvah, that's rooted all the way in the etzem. And like he asked the question back on 1272. So if it's coming from the etzem, so why do you say Bahai Al-Malek, we don't have it in this world? So the basic answer is because there's levels, because we're talking here about now it's coming through Levushim and it's coming through Simtsumim, or Halbasha and Simtsum Ha'er Eliki. Uba'elam Atzilus, he now continues. V'kolshkein l'maylam Atzilus. And what's happening in the world of Atzilus as a result of the mitzvahs that and the energy we generate, and for sure higher than Atzilus, Meir Hagilu Yeser. There, the revelation of our very mitzvahs right now radiate and illuminate more than they do in this world. This goes back to the theme I've mentioned a number of times. The Rebbe brings in the first Basi Legani, Yud Shvat Tovshin Yud Aleph, from the Rebbe Marash, the example of Munach Bekufsa. That when you do mitzvahs, we don't always see the change, but it generates real energy that exists, but it's like Kemunach Bekufsa. It's like placed and stored in a chest. Kufsa is a box, in a chest. And L'Asad Lave, that chest will be opened. So we don't have to create new energy. The energy is stored. It's stored in Munach Bekufsa, in Atzilus. The Rebbe often would say in the later years that now, since the Gula is right upon us, so we have the chest, we have all the Giluyim in the chest, we even have the chest, the key to the chest. The Rebbe used that word, the mafteach, the key, and it's a matter of just opening it up. So going back to here, so in Atzilus and higher than Atzilus, it's Meir Begili, even though lower, it's in the form of Halbasha and Simtsum Ha'er Eliki. Now he adds in the parentheses a point that he emphasized earlier. He says like this: Shekenu gam b'hamshacha primis. That this is true not just regarding Chitzenius, that in the Chitzenius worlds we don't see that, but even the very gili of the Pnimius Ha'er of that comes through mitzvahs also is subject to levels. I'm assuming he refers to what he said on page 1272, that it's also a medida, but he called it a medida atzmis. He said on 1272, and especially on 1273, I believe. So I want to find it inside, or maybe later even. Hold on. No, sorry, on 1275. Yeah, I said 1272 he started. On 1275 he said, the beginning of the paragraph, if you look, that even in the Yudke, even in the Gilei Pnimius, this also applies, that there's levels in the Gilui, and Atzilus and higher it radiates more. Commotion is barley ill, like we discussed earlier. And for sure, this is in the levels of Chitzenius. There, for sure, there's levels of revelation. Even like the difference between asleep and awake, or like he said before, the shefa is coming in a more intense way or less intense way, more revealed, less revealed. Okay. So it's important to focus on that there's both Pnimius and Chitzenius. Chitzenius is the way Vavke functions, and Pnimius is the way Yudke functions. So today, the Vavke is Niglis, is what we relate to. The Yudke is in the form of Mem Tzadik. It's already in a garment of the Mem Tzadik, the Chiluf, the exchange of the Mem Tzadik. And therefore, it's more concealed, even the Pnimius Ha'er. But like he said on top of the page, that just like the Pnimius, the Neshama, energizes the body, the Neshama too can experience, when they have the Gili HaPnimius, there's a taste of Seir also in the Neshama. The Neshama also has a deeper understanding. Tesu said an additional understanding in Torah and more vitality in Aveda Shebelev and the Kima Mitzvos on the third line of the top of the page. So both the Primus and Chitzenius are affected today, and Losad Love. The Vavke will be elevated to Yudke, but the Yudke is even deeper than that. The Yudke will be revealed without the Mem Tzadik, and the Vavke will be elevated. So you have both constantly. And Mizman Hazeh, the Vavke, the Chitzenius, is more dominant. The Yudke is still the force behind it, but the Yudke is more concealed, but it does have an impact. So both the Chitzenius and the Primus are both affected when you have the Levush, the garment. Okay. Avala Osid, this is all today, that you have these gradations and the different levels of revelation because it's through Halbasha and Simtsum. Avala Osid, but in the future, then there will be this Galas Ha'er, the air that is now concealed to some extent will be revealed. The Primus will be revealed. The Yudke in the Mitzvos will be revealed, not just through the Mem Tzadik, and not just the Vavke, which is the Chitzenius. So the Primus, which is concealed now, will be revealed. And that will cause the Chitzenius also to be elevated, which is the Vavke. So he says now like this, the Yi Agili Gam B'Bchinas Vavke. And the Agili will also come into Vavke, Acha B'Chinas Vavke, Yi Kemo Yudke Kanal. To the point that Vavke will be like Yudke. The outer will reflect the inner and will be elevated to that level. Though he made it clear that Yudke will still be higher, as we discussed on page 12, on the previous page, 1277. He's referring to Vavke and Yudke, I assume, but definitely to all of it. And it'll be the Gili Pnimi V'atzmi, the revelation of the inner. Remember, Pnimi is the inner intention, the inner energy that reflects God's inner intention in the whole creation. Like we said before, what is the intention? Torah Mitzvos, the condition that the world was created, of Chitzenius, the world was created for the Pnimius. So the Pnimi will be revealed, and Atzmi. And there Atzmi, the core energy, as we spoke about, that Mitzvos, where Mitzvos reach. But today it's concealed, and Lasad Love will be revealed. So in contrast, today we just said there's a difference in the Elamis, Grashmim, and Ruchniim, and Atzilus radiates more than in lower levels. And definitely higher than Atzilus. But La'asid will also, the Lamata, the Gili will be below, just like above. Like again, we said on page 1272, we said when Primus air radiates, just to use the words there, he says, when there's the Primus Masa Esach Chilukim B'Mayit Shari he says like this, Shenimsha B'chol Mokem Bli Yischalkus Ma'ilo Mato. Shekol HaTzimtzumim V'Achilukim D'Maylo Mata Ad Shelamatu B'Chinas Helmer Kol Zeh Hu B'Chitzenius Er. But in Pnimius Er, Lo Yesh Achilukim D'Maylo Mata. I just read from 1272 at the top. So Losid Lavi, that hierarchy will not be destroyed or eliminated, but below, that which is below will radiate like it is above. Lamata Kamoy Lamaila. Like Vavke will be like Yudke. V'hainu bli hefresh klal ben haruchnius v'agashmis. That in the future there will be no difference at all between the physical dimension and the spiritual dimension. No, the soul and body will become completely fused together as one. The gam begashmi is gila era atzmi. That also on a physical level there'll be the revelation of the er ha'atzmi, which now is not the case. There is a dichotomy and a separation between matter and spirit. I just want to refer back to an important paragraph that I think is important to mention. Where was it? About La'asad Love. I think it was, 1 second. How come I don't find it now?
We're talking about the point where he says that the atbash will be reversed, then it'll be revealed.
No. I'm talking about a powerful paragraph where he spoke about how la'asad lave will be all these revelations.
On the bottom of page 1276. Yeah, lastly, bechinas gilui mamish.
One minute.
I think it's the bottom of 1276.
Not what I'm looking for.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay, I'll find it later. I don't see it right now. Okay. And now he goes even further. Like he said at the bottom of page 1276, he said like this. And on the contrary, not only will they be like one, the primary revelation will be in the physical Gashmi itself. So remember, Havayu Elikim in V'yadaita Yem V'Shavesa Levecha Havayu Elikim is still that Havayu will shine through Elikim. Yudke will shine through the Vavke, like, for example. But the Etzaminyan of Ein Oid, that the Keli itself is rooted and will reveal divine dimensions that are Atzmi, and further, and Helam Atzmi is even a higher level, because now he says, canal, like he said before, 2 pages back, at the bottom of the page, he says, he says that La'asid will be the guf. Shaguf iker La'asid. The body will be the primary force in the future. Being that the gili then will be that the very helam, the very concealment that we're talking about, which today is concealed, that very concealment itself will become revealed. Now, on top of page 1279, and through the Gashmi, there'll also be a revelation also in the Ruchni. Now, clearly he means Gili Atzmi, because the Ruchni already has Gili. So he means this higher Gili will be revealed in the Ruchni through the Gashmi, like he said at the bottom of 1276, that then the Guf will actually feed, sustain the Neshama. Where he said the words, exact words I want to use is Ma'alos HaKelim Ala Eris, Sha'nefesh Yikabel Er V'chayis Ma'guf. Now remember, before he said that the whole world is dependent on mitzvahs, like a body is dependent on a soul. Now there's a state where the body is asleep and the soul is not so revealed. And there's a state when the soul is fully revealed and vitalizes the body when a person's awake. So now he's saying that the guf, which is of course where the mitzvahs manifest in the physical world, in the kelim, they will give power to the neshama. So it's not a contradiction, because earlier he's talking about how mitzvahs is the purpose of it all. So it's like the neshama to the guf. Now he's talking more about the difference between ruchnius and gashmius, between spiritual and material. So it's the material world, and the mitzvah says they manifest in the material world. In kelim, that are mamshich this gili ha'atzmi, and that itself will also elevate, it'll be a gili also in the ruchni. Okay. Who inyan schar mitzvah sheyeh la'asid? And now we're talking about not the schar mitzvah that we have today. That he explained at length the last page, how that it manifests, but it's more bal boshem b'tzimtzum. The schar mitzvah that we say schar mitzvah b'hai al maleka, that in this world we don't have, is what we're talking about now. This is the schar mitzvah that will be in the future, which is the gilui of the sheirish ha'atzmi of the mitzvahs, of the kelim, all the way in their highest levels. Today we don't see that, and we'll see that in the future. It'll be manifest, and it'll be megala elokus, and that way it'll be megala, it will manifest and express those higher levels of divine that are higher than regular giluyim, than the regular revelations that control and are regulated in Seder Ishtalshelus. So there's different things he said here. There'll be the giluy of Yudke. Vavke will be elevated to that level. It'll be Maila and Mata. That which is above will radiate below. And even furthermore, there's something that Dafke below, Dafke Gashmi, Keli, the Shimu, like he said, all is rooted even higher than the Neshama, than the Oyer itself. Oyer as an Oyer of Gili. Okay. Does anybody want to ask anything? Stop here. Any questions? No? Okay.
What is he
So
adding
now he's going to
here?
bring, excuse me?
Can I ask, what is he adding here? I must be missing something, because it sounds very repetitive of what he said earlier. So I'm trying to, I know he must be making some additional point, but
Not necessarily. He's tying it all together to make it clear to us. If you feel it's repetitive, I find it very useful, actually. It's rounding it all. It's rounding it all out. I would actually prefer the Rebbe Rashab was even more repetitive.
okay.
I don't see it that way. I see it as part of the flow of a conversation here. I mean, he's connecting things. If he wouldn't say this, there wouldn't be the flow to the next section. He's summing it up and bringing it together. I could, if I really want to push it, I could show you things he's adding here, but I don't want to go there even.
Okay.
For me, it's enough. He's just connecting everything he's saying and spelling it out.
Including, summarizing. Okay.
What is
Okay. V'yesh leimer.
Is the Rebbe saying here that when mitzvah becomes the mem tzadi becomes yudke, the atbash, that level in Lasi Lavo will be revealed. And then earlier he said that, and also Vatke will be elevated to a much higher level of Yudke, and it will also be Yudke Yudke. And here is he saying that the Vatke will actually become higher than the Yudke.
Where do you see that he says Vavke is higher than Yudke? He doesn't say that.
When he says here that the Gashmius will be.
Who says Gashmius is Vavke?
I thought that Vavke is the lower levels that reveal itself in Gashmi. And the last A is Malchus that reveals itself in physicality, no? In physical mitzvahs.
Okay, so good.
The value in the Esrog, the light of the Esrog will become even higher.
But Yudke is not Yudke is Etzem. You could say the Vavke will be elevated to the Yudke. That's exactly right. The Yudke is the Etzem.
But the physical mitzvahs, he's saying the Gashmius will be even higher, which will be even
higher than what? Higher is Yudke. That's the higher. Yudke is the higher. Yudke is Pnimi is Etzem Ha'er. That means Gilu Yudke. That today is concealed in the Mem Sadik.
But it's also the Yud-K that's concealed in the Vav-K.
Where's it? Yud-K is the Etzem Ha'or and the Helam Ha'atzmi that what you're saying Vav-K is rooted in. So it's rooted in Yud-K, correct? If you want to use Vav-K, Dafke.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
So I just said to you, Yud-K is that Etzem that you want to elevate Vav-K to. Nowhere it says that Yud-K is Ruchni and Vav-K is Gashmi. Where does it say that?
I thought that all the Kavanas is in Yud-K, the Or, and the Vav.
1 second. Well, you thought based on what?
That the Vav-K is
But where did it say that Yud-K is the Kavana Ruchnis? Where does it say that?
That's Ruchni.
Who said that? Yud-K is Atzmi, not Ruchni. It's higher than Ruchni. It's the Atzmi, where the Kalim are rooted.
The Mem Sadik.
That's why Yud-K is concealed.
Okay, Yud-K, Vav-K. Normally we say Yud-K.
Okay. We're going in, sir. You already asked this question a few days ago. I think you're misunderstanding what he's saying here. Mitzvah is Yud-K, Vav-K, not just Vav-K. The mitzvah that's rooted in Etzem consists of 2 dimensions. How it's rooted in the Etzem, higher than Giluyim, higher than Yichud Chitzeni, higher than Oyer, Hagili, HaMeir, Lezulase. It's rooted in the Meir La'atzme, the Oyer that's Yud-K is where it's within the divine, and even higher Helem Ha'er, and Helem Ha'atzmi is all the Yud-K. Got that? That's part of mitzvah. The second part of a mitzvah is how it comes down into this world. And that's the Vav-K part. Today, the Vav-K, we see how it comes into the world. The Yud-K, this Atzmi that I just said, is concealed in the Mem Sadik, or through Tzimtzum. La'asid Lavi, the very Gili Etzem of Mitzvah will be revealed. That's Yud-K. And the Vav-K will be elevated to that. And everything will then all radiate below. Vav-K is still part of the name of God. Vav-K is not Gashmis. Vav-K is not Kalim. Vav-K is a Gili of Yud-K Vav-K, just a second half of Yud-K Vav-K. That all will be revealed in this physical world. And Adarabah, the Kalim of this world, will be higher than the Ruchnius of the Elamis Elyenim, the Elamis Ruchnim, not higher than Yud-K. Doesn't say that anywhere. Yud-K Vav-K is the mitzvah. The full power of a mitzvah will be revealed, the Yud-K of it, and the Vav-K will be elevated to that.
So
as far as Malchus goes, fine. Yes, Malchus is a level that reflects how it goes down below. So he said the word, let's use the words. Malchus is Eli, he says, Tia, Bechinis Amok Tia, Bechinis is Galus, Helama Atzmi Mamish. That's Yud-K. That the Keli will be in his Gala, Shosha Atzmi. I'm reading the end of the paragraph, the middle paragraph on page 1277. That's correct. Basically saying that in the Malchus will be revealed, the Yud-K. In different words. Okay. You have to just remember, Yud-K is not Ruchnius and Vav-K Gashmis. Yud-K is not the Kavanis and Yud-K and Vav-K is the mitzvah. Mitzvah is one word, Mem Tzadik Vav-Hey, Yud-K Vav-K. It's one full dimension of revealing the Shema Etzem of the Eibishter. There's just 2 dimensions in that, the Pnimius of it and the Chitzenius of it.
But the Chitzonius of the name of Yud-K Vav-K is, then there's something separate. It's not Rishima, it's only Or. Yud-K Vav-K is only Or, and then there's a separate thing, but in addition to this.
There's the Or as it manifests it down
Rishima.
Below, that's Vav-K. As the Mashpia is Mashpia down, and Yud-K is how the Mashpia is to himself. Like he go back to the beginning, when he spoke about this whole topic, he began, if you look on page 1274 and 1275, where he first lays out what is Yud-K and Vav-K, especially 1275. I think you should go back there and you get the picture clear there. Okay?
Not really. I'm not clear on it. So I'll have to look it up.
Okay.
But I thought it's very interesting, by the way. You made a statement yesterday that the moon, some people say the moon has its own light. It's not just a reflection of the sunlight. So I looked it up, and it turns out.
Who says that? Who said that?
You made a statement that the moon.
I said that? I don't remember saying something like that.
Statement that the moon itself has its own light. That some people say that.
I said that the moon will be higher than the sun, we learned.
Right.
But
I think you
That's
also
what you mean?
said
Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead.
the moon has its own light. And I looked it up, and in science, because I never heard that concept, it turns out that there are scientists that believe that it has its own source of light. It's not just a reflection of the sun. It has its own light, but its light is concealed because it's infrared light. Infrared cannot be seen. Because then it says that anything that has heat in it produces infrared light, but it's at a different wavelength. So I thought that was just very
I don't know
interesting.
if that's what I was referring to, because I did not mean to say the moon has its own light. It said that the moon will be higher, will be meir and radiate and be mashpia to the sun, but that doesn't necessarily mean the light of the moon. It could be that the power of the moon, its power of keli, so to speak, of malchus, of makabel, the makabel will be mashpia to the mashpia. So maybe it's connected, maybe it's not. I don't know if it's connected to that.
Doesn't it say that the moon itself will be a ma'or, not just a reflection, will give its own light?
Do you have a source for that?
I've understood it the whole time, but maybe not. I don't know. Can I quote you chapter and verse? No, but I thought that was clear, that it will become a ma'or itself, not just a reflection.
It says that when the God created them, they were both Shnei Me'eres Hagdelim, and then the moon became a recipient. You have to go back to page 1208 and 1209 to really review that properly.
Okay, I'm just saying that it seems to be very interesting that this light is concealed in the moon in infrared light, and that could be a new light that will enter the world, that will be revealed, that so to speak, the parallel in Gashmi is that we will be able to see an infrared light level, which is not revealed at this time in Pueblo Silva. That's what I was just.
Well, there's different ways to understand it with the moon. You could say the moon reveals the Hela Ma'atzmi. In that sense, it's higher, but not necessarily that the light of the moon will be a stronger or different light. It could be a different revelation of godliness. That's what seems like it says there. But I have to look at it more closely if he's actually saying that the moonlight, because it's the same pasuk that says that the moon will be like the sun. It says the sun will be 7 times more as well. So need to look into it a bit more.
It couldn't have been like Yehuda and Yosef, and Yehuda was raised up to be higher than Yosef.
Yeah, but that's the way I'm saying it. That's not necessarily mean that Yehuda, it means that the Yehuda has a power that's higher than Yosef. But does it actually mean that the moon will shine with a more powerful light than the sun, or shine on more powerful divine energy? Maybe Helam itself will reveal something deeper than Gili reveals. But as I said, this needs more looking into. It's not really. I don't think I wouldn't right now talk about it so much on a physical level. It's more spiritual. What it actually means physically with the moon and the sun is another discussion. Right now, he's definitely talking on a spiritual level.
And I just want to conclude that. I think we're on probably not exactly, but I think.
Okay, but I don't want to, listen, we're digressing. Let me go back to Ayin Beis here. Okay. So he says now, next paragraph, the next parentheses, I mentioned this earlier, and here's interesting how the Rebbe Rashab explains it. He says, V'yesh lemer, that this Schar Mitzvah L'Asid will explain the Zeh Inyan Mitzvos B'Telis L'Asid. So there's a machlekes in Gemara, and there's an opinion that says that mitzvos will be eliminated in the future. It's regarding a discussion whether when you, God forbid, bury somebody in tachrichim, in shrouds, whether tachrichim could be shatnus or not. Because shatnus obviously is not allowed today. A person that's not alive is not responsible for mitzvahs. But Tchias HaMesim will come. And if there'll be mitzvahs then you buried somebody with shatnus. Not getting into the discussion whether it decomposed or not. So the Gemara says, mitzvahs p'telis l'ased. The mitzvahs will no longer be there in the future. And there's a long discussion in the Chassidus and Tanya and Ageres HaKedesh 26. The Rebbe kach sich a lot in it, many different letters and notes. that it's ultimately two tkufas. Because it's clearly, we also say, V'sham nasa lefanecha k'mitzvos etzenecha, the Rambam paskins, Mashiach comes, we'll have shleimus hamitzvos. Not only will we have mitzvahs, we'll have all the mitzvahs. The Beis Hamikdash, the Karbon, everything will come back to full glory. So how do we say mitzvahs p'teles? So they answer, there's two tkufas, there's two periods. One is a time there'll be mitzvahs, then they'll elevate to another level. But the big question is, how could you say mitzvahs is mitzvahs nitzah? Teirazu leitehei muchlefes. Mitzvahs are nitzchim, they're ratzon Hashem. It's not just a matter of things you do or don't do. It's God's very essence of his ratzon. That's what we're speaking about mitzvahs now. So how could that be bottled? So the answer, one of the answers that the Rebbe Rashab is now going to say, V'yadua de pirush b'telis, it's known that the meaning of b'telis, meaning eliminated, bottle, no more, is not that they will be eliminated. Like when you say shraga b'tira mayahan, a candle in the light of the sun, what benefit does it serve? Because the gili atzmi of the Ratzon Elyon will reveal la'asid, so the mitzvahs as we know them today will be bottled because you'll see the very core of God's will. So it doesn't mean it will be eliminated, God forbid. It will mean the mitzvahs as we know them in the very practical level will be no longer there. V'hainu, which means the hamshachas hamitzvahs achshav, that which from mamshech, the hamshachas mitzvahs achshav, that which is generated by mitzvahs today, or the generation of mitzvahs today, who be'ein hareich is infinitely distant, l'gaba hamshacha the mitzvahs the lost, compared to the hamshacha of the mitzvahs in the future. And that's why it will be bottled, as in completely overshadowed, completely nullified in the presence, headed tfisas mokim, as if it has no place. It's like someone standing before a tremendous, giant, brilliant person. So even a smaller chacham is completely bottled, completely loses himself, because his chacham is completely nullified in the presence of such great light.
So you're translating heder tfisas makom as basically like overshadowed by?
That's one word. It's I gave there's many different examples for it. I think it's more than overshadowed. That's just one way of expressing it. It really means, like I said, heder tfisas makom means that when you're a small light in the face of a great light is bottled. That's the expression. Heder tfisas makom literally means that it has no place. The example he used earlier in Ayin Beis would be when a teacher is a great teacher, but he stands before his master, he loses some completely. He can't speak, he can't say anything, he loses all his intelligence. He says it's completely nothing compared to what my master knows. You know, there's an expression, this is different expressions, you know, where there are things that are commensurate to each other. So you could have a wise person and a wiser person. So the wise person maybe is not as wise, but you can't say he's bottle. You could say, you could say he respects and he defers to someone that is greater than he is. But then there's a level of greatness that is so powerful and so infinitely beyond. It's like one compared to infinity. It's not one compared to a million or a billion, one compared to infinite. These are just examples. You have to find examples that we relate to, but this is an example that la'asid will be a completely, basically, let's put it this way. When you take a lulav and esrog today, so you relate to it this way. How do we relate? It says in Shulchan Aruch and Torah shebiksav, lekachtem lechem, take an esrog and the dal minim asukis and shake it like we've learned. In it lies atzmis dika'er, the chsadim that he spoke about from Zav, Atzilus, and all the way to the Ratzon Atzmi of the Eibishter. He wants dafka this esrog. He doesn't want an apple. He doesn't want a watermelon, an esrog. But you don't see any of that. You believe it. Maybe there'll be a little gilui in a person's feelings. Maybe the gilui of the mitzvahs will manifest in this world and we'll see blessings, or maybe not. More concealed, less concealed. Everything changes. Together with the esrog, you'll see the Ratzon Elyon shining. And when you see the very God's Atzmis Dika Ratzon in the esrog, I think even you, Yitzchak, gave the example. You see the table, but you'll see the alakus of the table. So the table is completely nullified in the presence of the Ratzon Elyon. It would be like looking at the piece of art and seeing the artist. Imagine the artist being revealed, and here is his art. The art then becomes completely nullified in the presence of the artist, in the gili of the artist. Or you see the deeper kavana of the structure of existence. The dire betachtenim. When you go into a home and you see the person who's living in the home, you don't really look at the details, the tables, the chairs. You see the presence of the great person living in this mansion. When you went into the Mishkan, you felt God's presence. Yes, there were kalim, and there were walls, and there were sections, correct? But they were all essentially only channels of divine presence. When you saw Avram Avinu, you saw Chesed of Atzilus walking on earth. This is a seamless connection between Chetzenius and Gashmis. And still there's something also deeper in Gashmis, as he said before. But right now he's talking about the fact that there will be La'asad love, will be this revelation. When you see godliness in existence, existence will be nullified. And even mitzvahs, which part of mitzvahs? The mitzvahs as we know them today will be bottled, headed tfisas mokim, when you're standing, when you have the Ratzon Elyon itself in a manifest and revealed way. Okay.
Thank you. That was amazing clarification. Thank you.
And you see it all the time, by the way. I always mention when you're reading a book, for example, a sefer, and you get so absorbed, you don't even know you're reading letters and words. You don't even know you're turning pages. And someone who's looking from the outside says, what do you mean? There are pages here, there are words. But you're so consumed with the message and the feelings, you can even be crying and laughing, though at the end of the day, it's a narrative with words and letters on a page. Or someone looks at musical notes. So we look at musical notes. For some people, it's gibberish. For some people, they know how to read it. But then someone sits down at a piano or a violin or instrument and starts playing. What do you think he's looking at? The notes are just the kalim, but they're completely headed tfisas mokum to the music that's coming out of it. Yes, you need it because that's where God wants to manifest through them. So that's where you get to the place of total, like we talked, totally consumed, where there's no subject and object, and they become melt into one, to the point you can't even distinguish between the keli and the oir, or in this case, between the geshem and the ruach, the gashmi and the ruchni, to that extent. So then, of course, the outer dimension of, let's say, the technicalities of the musical notes are completely bottled, headed tfisas mokum, compared to the music that's being played, which will be, of course, the state of la'asad love. Okay, we'll stop here. End of the parentheses on top of page 1279. And any other questions? The rest of the paragraph is going to talk about how we have a taste of this also today in Elam Hazeh. We also have a taste of it. And the Rebbe Rashab is going to continue explaining what mitzvahs exactly accomplish in this world in contrast to La'asad love. So a little more to go, and the journey continues. Any further questions?
No, I just wanted to put in a plug for your masterclass this past Wednesday for everybody to listen, because you're ending on a note talking about bittul, and I know it's about the bittul of the gashmi, the material aspect of the mitzvah to the elokus that's going to be revealed by. But nevertheless, the issue is bittul, and this masterclass on Wednesday was phenomenal because it was a whole class about bittul, but it was spoken with such plain English at such a general, universal way. It was amazing. I mean, of course, if someone listening to you understood that's what you're talking about, but basically the subject was, why should you be humble when we're living in such a self-centered world? What's the motivation? And it was just phenomenal because clearly the subject was bittul, but you didn't use the word once. You didn't even go there. It was really amazing. So I just want to encourage my classmates to listen to this one, because even though these Wednesday classes are generally at a more high general level, more universal for non-experts in Chassidus, this one is really worth listening to, especially if you want to explain bittul to someone without having to go into all the Kabbalah and all this. Anyways, I wanted to say Yishur Koach. It was a brilliant class.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Can I tell you, very honored and humbled.
great
I'll
class.
also put in a plug, if I may, before we conclude. Even though all of you were very generous with the end of the year gift of meaning campaign, we still have it open now in case anybody has not given or wants to give for the end of the year. We're sending out some reminders. So the campaign is it's closed, obviously, when we finished it, but it's still open on the page. So if anybody you know, this is maybe a good opportunity. Some people want to give their tax-deductible donations before the end of the year. So I just wanted to plug that as well. And with that, as I said, we'll conclude here at the top of page 1279. And let me stop.
I'll share the link for the masterclass. I'll share the link, and I'll share the link for your donations if people want to give. So you'll get a little extra
pass
class.
it on to people. This is not. I'm only if you haven't or you want someone to share it with. I'm not